The 1840s were a time of large-scale change for Texas and its diverse population. Most notably, the U.S. annexed Texas in 1845. An opinion piece about the annexation appeared in the abolitionist newspaper The Liberator in October 1848, shortly after the conclusion of the U.S.-Mexico War. We have no record of who wrote the article. It appears under the heading Correspondence of the Tribune, likely referring to the New York Tribune. Both papers were run by abolitionists, a group that opposed the practice of slavery. Many northern abolitionists opposed the annexation of Texas because, if it were annexed, it would become a slave state. However, the issue of slavery is absent from the piece. Instead, the author objects to Texas's inhabitants. The author mentions two undesirable populations, Mexican Americans and the Texas Rangers, an often violent police force that was known for its brutality toward indigenous and Latinx populations. The Texas Rangers began as a group of volunteers. The first Rangers started organizing in 1823 to remove indigenous populations and make room for white settlers. Beginning in the 1840s, the Rangers began to turn their attention to Mexicans who had settled north of the Rio Grande. The author of the Liberator piece characterizes the Rangers as an immoral group who committed awful crimes against the supposedly helpless, imbecile Mexicans. The Rangers' typical portrayal in academic sources and in the media is much more positive. They symbolize law and order in the lawless West, and many continue to highlight their bravery and their integrity. Besides the Battle of the Alamo, no topic of Texas history has been written about more, either from a traditionally Anglo perspective or from a revisionist, often Latinx perspective. During the U.S.-Mexico War, the Rangers became a legitimized fighting force and encountered residents of Mexico, who referred to them as Los Tejanos Sangrientos, the Bloody Texans. The Texas Rangers were perhaps the most extreme example of anti-Mexican sentiment in Texas. Throughout the 1820s, the Mexican government encouraged Anglo settlement of Texas, but they reversed their decision in 1830. By then, Anglo settlers outnumbered Mexicans by about 10 to 1. These settlers had a mission. They had come to civilize the Southwest. Stephen F. Austin, a prominent Texas official, often stated that his purpose was to, quote, redeem Texas from the wilderness. White settlers were also influenced by strong principles of racial superiority. Once they saw that the Mexican population was composed of mixed-race people who did not resemble their version of whiteness, they began to discriminate against them. The U.S.-Mexico War fostered this anti-Mexican sentiment, with Mexicans often being compared unfavorably to Native Americans because of their uncivilized nature. Now, let's look at how this northern abolitionist, in his article in The Liberator, evaluates Mexican American populations and the Rangers in the context of Texas annexation. Extending the area of freedom seems to refer to manifest destiny and U.S. expansionism, which includes the annexation of Texas. We see a characterization of Mexican Americans as wild and uncivilized. Even in an anti-slavery publication such as The Liberator, we still find ideas of racial hierarchies. By referencing the process known as mestizaje, or racial mixing, and by calling the population semi-civilized, we see how this northern writer sustains negative perceptions of Mexican Americans. At the same time, the author recognizes the brutality of the Texas Rangers and the illegitimacy of their actions, as the author distinguishes between their actions and the enforcement of, quote, wholesome law. This article reveals the limitations of abolitionist beliefs and shows us how those in the North viewed Mexican Americans, a perspective not often heard. Though the author looks down on Mexican Americans, he also believes that the Rangers are much worse. As much as this article is an expression of racist beliefs, it is also a harsh critique of state-sanctioned racism and violence embedded in the Texas Rangers. In the eyes of this abolitionist, those two ideas can go hand in hand.